everyone. Okay, so I don't know if I wanted to do a list of my favorite movie sequels because a lot of my favorite sequels you've kind of already know my love for. So I figured that I think maybe I just kind of just need to focus on something else. So how about we talk about my top 10 least favorite movie sequels? Because this list will contain a lot more that I have yet to really discuss my opinion towards for the most part. So we'll go ahead for that. And for this time, I'll be looking at these sequels based on how much they do not approve upon their predecessor. Now, these aren't all sequels to films that I originally loved. I mean, they're just sequels that suck. But sequels that are worse than the others. Even if the other ones were bad, these were far worse. So that's just kind of how it is. So yeah, let's start. Let's rank. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, is pretty much the worst of Superman you could expect. The first Superman movie definitely blew us all away. It was pretty impressive for the time. It definitely did leave a big mark on the superhero films. It was overall a pretty good movie. The sequels kind of started to downgrade. The second one working out fine, but then the third one really doing a lot to become a disaster. And then of course there's this one. Superman 4 has a lot of issues. One of the biggest issues I can't get over in this movie, the effects. The effects for this movie are surprisingly awful. And considering that the first film had such great and much better effects and it came out in the 70s, while this one was the latest in the four films, it's kind of ridiculous. A lot of other things don't add up. The plot points are dumb, the villain's dumb, but overall, this film is just not fun to admire. It's very unnecessary. It really does do a lot to make itself feel left out. Now, these are the weird kind of sequels. The first Bad News Bears movie felt good enough like a standalone film, as well as, of course, the remake. But there actually were two sequels. One I found decent enough. I mean, it's forgettable, but I can't say it's awful. But then the third one, the Bad News Bears go to Japan. I can understand why it's not very well known. Honestly, this is where I started to realize there really don't need to be sequels for this. In a story which sounds interesting, the baseball team in Japan just turns into this long, underwhelming, not very fun plot that doesn't really add much to what we wanted to see, or at least to what I wanted to see. Because again, not a lot of people know about these sequels, or even the first movie to begin with. So really, there's not much I can say about this that you all can agree with. You're just saying, "Oh, I don't care if it sucks or not. I have no idea what it is." Overall, it's a sequel to the Bad News Bears movie, which is good, and this one just was not good at all. Okay, I've talked about this before. I enjoyed the first Hotel Transylvania movie. For as flawed as most of the humor was, it still overall turned out fine. The second film wasn't as good, but I can't say I hated it. I definitely did think it provided enough to be acceptable in some ways. This one, on the other hand, I personally have a despise for. Why? All the humor in it, and okay, maybe not hard, but most of the humor, a majority of the humor in this movie is terrible humor. It's not funny at all. It's just almost sort of reminds me of, dare I say, the Emoji Movie. Yeah, I know it's a very bad thing to compare to, but I'm sorry. This movie had unfunny humor. Even the plot kind of felt rushed out too. I mean, it did some towards, but it's just not fun at all. It just felt like a big downgrade. I didn't even bother watching the fourth one because I shouldn't have this. So in my opinion, this film is just really bad. I honestly just super hated it more than others. Okay, here's something. The first Nutty Professor movie, not the 60s remake that no one heard about, the one with Eddie Murphy from 1996, is, most people would say, a comedy classic. It had some fun. There was Eddie Murphy in this fun role. He played the weird, fat, nerdy scientist who breaks a potion to become sexy. It was a fun, simple comedy story that definitely provides some good laughs. The sequel, The Clumps, it's just not funny at all. This is honestly Eddie Murphy's one of his most unfunny roles. I mean, I do enjoy the fun of him playing all the family members, but this movie just doesn't get the humor off the way I want it to. None of it's funny. It's fart jokes, it's disgusting humor, it's stuff that's just drawn out and goes on for too long. This really does feel like a rushed sequel. I'm sorry, but I know people would like to love it because it would have the same humor, but I just don't think it does. Now let's talk about The Karate Kid. The first Karate Kid from the 80s was certainly a fun time. The second one was alright, for the most part. The third one was when this franchise did start to go in a big downhill spiral. Because after that movie kind of left me disappointed, this one left me like, oh my god, why? The next Karate Kid is supposed to tell the story of the famous Pat Morita, what's it, Mr. Miyagi, I think that, who trains a newcomer, a girl about the same age as Daniel, but this girl is honestly pretty unlikable, like extremely unlikable. They try to make her so that she's like a female version of Daniel, but she is so unlikable, I cannot take it. I also can't take how, not that there's so much similarities, it feels like a remake, but just how much there is that doesn't actually work well. Like, the story doesn't work well, it's not very well paced. This movie just comes off as forgettable. That's a problem. Okay, so I have to talk about this one again. I didn't want to. I really don't think this movie's worth talking about, but whatever. The Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies, based on the famous book series I loved in middle school, were okay at most. The first one was alright. It was a live action film. It had some alright moments. It definitely did do a good job being faithful to its source material. The second one, I think, is pretty much a classic. Or not really, but I really do enjoy the second one. It's definitely a superior film. The third one is pretty good also. Definitely does some good stuff to work well, and definitely does work well as a conclusion to this movie trilogy. But then they had to do the fourth one, and we all know the complaints. They replaced the whole cast, the newcomers just aren't as fun, the humor's not funny. It's mostly just because this doesn't even feel faithful. I mean, yeah, it has a faithful story, but the humor in it is just Gen Z and all around terrible. So, yeah, I don't have much to say about this. This is just bad. So, I talked about this before. Batman and Robin is a very unnatural Batman movie. I mean, the first three Batman movies had a lot of fun to it. There was the first one, which was amazing. The second one, which was pretty good. The third one, which was a little underwhelming. This one, that's just... Like I always say, this one is just awful. I mean, George Clooney is the worst Batman, let's be honest. Arnold Schwarzenegger is just too funny to play a serious villain. This movie just doesn't do anything seriously. It takes the character, and after he's been put in a lot of serious adventures, they just make it like a comedy now. Not even a good comedy. Like, the humor that we would expect to be funny still doesn't come off as funny. There's a lot of this stuff is just forced, unnatural, and again, this is the most dumbest we expect from Batman. I don't want this dumb material from Batman. So yeah, Batman and Robin is so hilariously awful. I mean, come on. So this one I rarely really talk about. The first Neverending Story movie was certainly a weird film, but it definitely provided with some good stuff. The second one was bad, but then again, it could have been worse. It could have been this, The Neverending Story 3, which is just ridiculously, oh my god, why? Like, a lot of the stuff from the first two movies is brought back here in such a ridiculous, dumb way. Like, the characters are dumbly designed. They also even have dumb personalities. And the new cast members, like the new actor to play the main lead, is just not very fun. They try to make him a new grown-up person, but he's just still not as fun. And then there's Jack Black, who has a role in this. Before we would know him for bigger roles, this is what he was doing. I know, crazy for his career, right? But honestly, I can't say he's the worst in this movie. It's just, why is he in this movie? So yeah, overall, this movie is just stupid, unfun, and very forgettable. Yeah, I think we all know what I'm talking about here. I've talked about this movie before, once, twice, many times to be exact. Son of the Mask is, like I said before, an awful sequel. It doesn't have the original cast. It's supposed to be made for the family, but comes off as even creepier. As bad CGI, just bad cast, bad characters. I can't say more about it. This movie's awful. I mean, it's awful. I'm sorry, but look, I can't. I really don't think I can say anything else I've already said before. So just avoid it. The first Mask movie is hilarious Jim Carrey comedy. The sequel has no Jim Carrey, new characters who are not funny at all. Please avoid it. So here's Jaws 3. My God, Jaws 3 is so dumb. Not even just dumb. It is awful in every way possible. I literally could not find a single moment in Jaws 3 that I could give a pass. Like, There's everything about this movie was done wrong. Well, like I'm just gonna be honest there. The shark moments were done wrong. The plot was done wrong, and you know what? Of course, even the existence of this movie is just wrong. They screwed up when they wanted to turn this into a Jaws franchise because you got a movie that feels works fine as a standalone, but you know that it's brought in lots of people, so you got to make more. You couldn't just do anything else. You just got to make more movies. Man, and this is where it got bad, and this is honestly just terrible. A lot of people would say that the fourth one is the worst, but in my opinion, the third one just is far worse, honestly, because the effects are worse, and the way the plot is settled is also worse. So this is the worst Jaws film, and by far one of the worst movies I could ever experience. Is so bad. If you gotta love Jaws, but you should not really have any reason to want to watch this. Guess all I can say that was I don't have my facial hair. I haven't shaved a while. I wanted to see how my hair grows because I always like to shave, but I figured I'd see if I can try to give it a little break before I go back to shaving. I'm gonna just see how big my mustache can grow and just let this go. But once I finally see myself in a good mustache, then I'll shave. I just want to do an experiment. So how do you think it looks so far? You think it's noticeable? And not noticeable yet, but it might be someday. Just gotta wait a while, I guess. It'll take time, but for now, one day you might see me look a little different than you used to.